10 psychological biases that secretly control you. But name what if I told you that roughly 95% of your decisions aren't actually yours? Not metaphorically, literally. Your brain runs on autopilot using pre-programmed shortcuts called cognitive biases that hijack your reasoning without you ever noticing. This isn't self-help speculation. This is hard cognitive science. For decades, researchers in behavioral economics and cognitive psychology have mapped the exact mental shortcuts your brain uses to process the 11 million bits of sensory information it receives every second. These shortcuts called heuristics helped your ancestors survive. But in modern life, they're systematically sabotaging your decisions, relationships, finances, and potential. Here's what changes everything. These biases operate below conscious awareness. You can't eliminate them, they're hardwired into your neural architecture. But once you understand the specific mechanisms, you can recognize them in real time and override their influence. Ancient philosophers spoke of knowing thyself. Modern neuroscience has revealed what that actually means. Understanding the invisible programs running your mental operating system and learning to interrupt them before they derail your life. I'm about to expose 10 of the most powerful cognitive biases controlling you right now, plus specific protocols to detect and neutralize each one. These aren't mindset shifts. These are tactical interventions that exploit your brain's metacognitive capacity, your ability to think about your thinking. Your decisions are being made for you. Time to take back control. Body. The 10 Techniquest Part 1. Confirmation Bias Detection Protocol. You think you evaluate evidence objectively. You don't. Your brain actively seeks information that confirms what you already believe while systematically filtering out contradictory data. This happens automatically outside conscious awareness. Neuroscientists studying confirmation bias have discovered something disturbing. When you encounter information that aligns with existing beliefs, your ventral striatum, your reward center, activates. Your brain literally experiences pleasure from confirming its beliefs and discomfort from challenging them. You're addicted to being right. This is technique number 1 out of 10. The Confirmation Bias Detection Protocol. Here's your exact practice for 15 days. Implement the Steelman exercise. Each evening, identify one belief you held that day, political, personal, professional. Spend 5 minutes deliberately constructing the strongest possible argument against your position. Don't create a weak strawman. Build the most compelling counterargument you can imagine. Write it down as if you genuinely believed it. The mechanism rewires your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, your rational reasoning center. By forcing yourself to genuinely consider opposing views, you're creating new neural pathways that weaken automatic confirmation seeking. You're training your brain to value truth over comfort. Start building Steelman arguments nightly, and watch your certainty transform into intellectual flexibility and genuine open-mindedness. Part 2. Availability. Heuristic correction method. You think plane crashes are more dangerous than car accidents. You fear shark attacks more than vending machine deaths. You overestimate terrorism while underestimating heart disease. Your brain judges probability based on how easily examples come to mind, not actual statistical reality. Research on the availability heuristic reveals that your amygdala, your fear center, assigns threat levels based on memory accessibility. Vivid, emotional, or recent events dominate your risk assessment, regardless of actual frequency. Media coverage exploits this mercilessly, making rare events feel common. This is technique number 2 out of 10. The Availability Heuristic Correction Method. Execute this protocol once weekly for 8 weeks. Choose one fear or concern you have. Research the actual statistical probability. Write down both your intuitive estimate and the real data. Calculate the ratio between them. Keep a log showing how dramatically your brain distorts reality based on memorable examples versus actual frequency. Why this works: you're creating cognitive dissonance between intuition and data. Each time you expose the gap, you're weakening your amygdala's automatic trust in memory-based risk assessment. Your prefrontal cortex learns to question gut feelings about probability. You're building a mental immune system against fear-based manipulation. Start quantifying your intuitions against reality and watch irrational fears dissolve while appropriate concerns emerge. Part 3. Sunk cost fallacy. Interruption technique. You've invested 3 years in a failing relationship, 5 years in a career that drains you, $20,000 in a business that won't work. You can't quit now, you've invested too much. This logic is destroying your life. Neuroscientists studying decision-making have found that sunk costs activate your ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the region that processes loss aversion. Your brain experiences already spent resources as ongoing investments, making it neurologically painful to waste them by quitting. You're essentially throwing good time after bad to avoid admitting loss. This is technique number 3 out of 10, the sunk cost fallacy interruption technique. Your intervention is radical, twice monthly for 6 months, out of your life for sunk costs. Ask, if I were starting fresh today with zero prior investment, would I choose this relationship, job, project, habit? If the answer is no, you're being controlled by sunk costs. Document every instance where you're continuing something solely because you've already invested resources. The mechanism forces honest evaluation. By reframing decisions as if you're starting fresh, you're bypassing the neural pathways that incorporate past investment into present calculations. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex can evaluate pure forward-looking value without contamination from loss aversion. Start conducting fresh start audits regularly and watch yourself abandon dead-end situations you've been clinging to for years. Part 4. Anchoring bias. Neutralization systems. First number you hear becomes your reference point for all subsequent judgments. A house listed at $800,000 makes $600,000 seem reasonable. A salary negotiation starting at $50,000 anchors the final number downward. Your brain cannot escape this influence. Research on anchoring reveals that even completely random numbers like the last 2 digits of your social security number affect subsequent valuations. Your brain uses the first information as an anchor, then adjusts insufficiently from it. Salespeople, negotiators, and marketers exploit this mercilessly. This is technique number 4 out of 10, the anchoring bias neutralization system. Here's your practice for 20 days. Before any financial decision or negotiation, deliberately generate 3 alternative anchor points. If a car is listed at $25,000, calculate what 40% less $15,000, the same $25,000, at 40% more $35,000 would be. Research comparable prices independently. Force your brain to consider multiple reference points before the external anchor sets. Why this works? You're disrupting the automatic anchoring process by flooding your working memory with competing numbers. Your parietal cortex, which handles numerical processing, learns to evaluate value across a range, rather than adjusting from a single anchor. You're essentially jamming the anchoring mechanism with noise. Start generating multiple anchors proactively and watch your resistance to manipulation increase while negotiation. Outcomes improve dramatically. Part 5. Dunning-Kruger. Awareness protocol. You Ray most confident about topics you know least about. Beginners overestimate their competence. Experts underestimate theirs. This isn't humility or arrogance, it's a systematic miscalibration in how your brain assesses its own knowledge. Neuroscientists studying metacognition have discovered why. Competence requires knowing what you don't know. Incompetent people lack the very skills needed to recognize their incompetence. Your prefrontal cortex cannot accurately assess knowledge gaps it doesn't know exist. You're essentially too ignorant to realize you're ignorant. This is technique number 5 out of 10, the Dunning-Kruger Awareness Protocol. Execute the sequence monthly for 1 year. Choose a topic you feel confident about. Spend 90 minutes studying advanced material on that topic: graduate level textbooks, academic papers, expert debates. Document how your confidence changes. Track the inverse relationship. As actual knowledge increases, confidence often decreases initially as you discover complexity you didn't know existed. The mechanism builds intellectual humility. Each exposure to advanced material reveals hidden complexity, which recalibrates your metacognitive accuracy. Your anterior prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-assessment, learns to associate surface-level understanding with uncertainty rather than confidence. You're training accurate self-evaluation. Start systematically exposing your knowledge gaps and watch false certainty transform into calibrated confidence. Part 6. Social proof override method. You look at restaurant lines to decide where to eat. Check reviews before buying. Follow trending topics. Adopt popular opinions. Your brain outsources decision-making to the crowd because evaluating options independently is metabolically expensive. Research on social influence reveals that conformity activates your ventral striatum, your reward system, while descending from group consensus activates your amygdala, your threat center. Your brain is literally wired to feel good about conforming and anxious about diverging. Evolution favored group cohesion over individual accuracy. This is technique number 6 out of 10. The social proof override method. Your protocol is this. For 30 days, make one deliberately counter-consensus decision weekly. Choose the empty restaurant. Ignore bestseller lists and pick unknown books. Form opinions before reading reviews. The decision doesn't matter. What matters is practicing independent evaluation before consulting social proof. Why this works? You're desensitizing your amygdala's anxiety response to social divergence. Each counter-consensus choice that doesn't result in catastrophe weakens the neural association between nonconformity and threat. Your prefrontal cortex strengthens its capacity for independent analysis. Start practicing strategic nonconformity and watch your susceptibility to herd behavior decrease while authentic preferences emerge. Part 7. Recency bias correction technique. Most recent experiences disproportionately influence your judgments. The market crashed yesterday, so you sell everything. Your last date went poorly, so you give up on dating. A recent success makes you overconfident. Your brain weights recent data far more. HEAVIL than statistical trends. Neuroscientists studying memory and decision-making have found that recent memories are more accessible. They require less cognitive effort to retrieve. Your hippocampus and prefrontal cortex default to recent examples because they're energetically cheaper to access than comprehensive historical analysis. This is technique number 7 out of 10, the recency bias correction technique. Here's your intervention. Before any significant decision, implement the historical pattern analysis. Take 10 minutes to document not just recent experiences, but patterns across the past year, 3 years, 5 years. Create a timeline. Calculate averages. Force yourself to incorporate long-term data before deciding based on recent events. The mechanism overrides accessibility bias. By deliberately retrieving and organizing historical data, you're activating your hippocampus's pattern recognition capabilities rather than its most recent default. Your orbital frontal cortex, which evaluates options, receives richer, more representative information. Start incorporating historical patterns before decisions and watch emotional reactions to recent events lose their disproportionate influence. Part 8. Framing effect. Disruption system weather. You hear 90% survival rate or 10% mortality rate changes your decision, even though they're mathematically identical. How information is presented determines your choice more than the actual information. Your brain is absurdly susceptible to linguistic framing. Research on framing effects shows that positive frames gains activate your ventral striatum, while negative frames losses activate your amygdala. The same information triggers completely different neural responses based purely on presentation. Marketers, politicians, and media manipulate this constantly. This is technique number 8 out of 10. The framing effect disruption system. Execute this practice for 25 days. Whenever you encounter persuasive information ads, news, proposals, deliberately reframe it in opposite terms. If it emphasizes what you'll gain, reframe it as what you'll lose or maintain. If it emphasizes what you'll avoid, reframe it as what you'll achieve. Force both frames before deciding. Why this works? You're interrupting automatic frame acceptance by generating counter frames. Your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex learns to extract underlying information, independent of presentation. You're building immunity to linguistic manipulation by training frame shifting as a reflex. Start systematically. Reframing persuasive information and watch manipulation attempts become transparent while decision quality improves. Part 9. Attribution. Error recognition protocol. When you fail, it's because of circumstances. When others fail, it's because of their character. When you succeed, it's your skill. When others succeed, it's luck. This asymmetry fundamental attribution error poisons relationships and distorts reality. Neuroscientists studying social cognition have discovered that your brain uses different neural pathways for self-evaluation versus other evaluation. Your medial prefrontal cortex, active in self-reflection, has access to your internal states, intentions, and constraints. When evaluating others, you only observe behavior, so your brain defaults to character-based explanations. This is technique number 9 out of 10. The attribution error recognition protocol. Your intervention is this. Daily for 40 days. When you judge someone's behavior, force yourself to generate 3 situational explanations before accepting any character-based explanation. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe medical emergency, maybe distracted by crisis, maybe GPS gave bad instruction. Document these alternative explanations until the practice becomes automatic. The mechanism trains perspective taking. By systematically generating situational attributions, you're strengthening your temporal junction, the brain region, involved in understanding others' mental states. You're building more accurate social cognition, while reducing reflexive judgment. Start generating situational attributions systematically and watch interpersonal conflicts decrease while empathy and understanding naturally expand. Part 10. Present bias temporal extension method. You choose immediate gratification over long-term benefit constantly. Skip the workout for comfort now. Eat junk food despite health goals. Procrastinate despite knowing you'll regret it. Your brain dramatically discounts future value, a phenomenon called hyperbolic discounting. Research on intertemporal choice reveals that immediate rewards activate your ventral striatum intensely, while future rewards barely register. Your limbic system evolutionarily ancient cannot properly value delayed gratification, because your ancestors rarely survived long enough for future to matter. You're operating with Stone Age temporal preferences in a modern world. This is technique number 10 out of 10, the present bias temporal extension method. Execute this protocol before any decision between immediate and delayed gratification. Implement future self-visualization. Close your eyes for 60 seconds. Vividly imagine yourself experiencing the future consequence. Feel the regret of not working out, or feel the pride and energy of having completed it. Make the future emotionally real before choosing. Why this works: vivid visualization activates your ventromedial prefrontal cortex and visual cortex, making future outcomes feel more present. You're essentially tricking your limbic system into treating delayed rewards with similar emotional weight as immediate ones. You're hacking your temporal discounting mechanism. Start visualizing future consequences before choices, and watch self-control become effortless as future benefits feel immediate. Closing these 10 protocols aren't isolated interventions, they're components of a comprehensive system for recognizing and neutralizing the cognitive biases that hijack your decision-making every single day. Confirmation seeking, availability distortion, sunk cost traps, anchoring manipulation, competence miscalibration, social conformity, recency weighting, framing susceptibility, attribution asymmetry, present bias. Together, they address the complete architecture of mental shortcuts your brain uses to navigate complexity, shortcuts that served your ancestors but systematically sabotage your modern life. Ancient wisdom tradition spoke of waking up or seeing clearly. Modern cognitive science has revealed what that actually means. Recognizing the invisible biases operating your mind and developing the metacognitive capacity to override them. Science has proven what philosophers suspected: you're not as rational as you think. Most of your judgments emerge from automatic processes you never consciously examine. But awareness changes everything. Once you can see the biases operating, you can interrupt them. Your transformation doesn't start tomorrow or next week. It starts the moment you catch yourself in one of these patterns, the moment you notice your brain confirming its beliefs, following the crowd, or sacrificing your future for present comfort. Choose differently. The version of you that makes decisions based on reality rather than bias. That thinks independently rather than automatically. That controls their mind rather than being controlled by it. That version isn't someone you need to become. It's who you are when you're paying attention. Start noticing right now, not eventually. Your liberated mind is waiting. The only question is whether you'll recognize the biases controlling you before they determine your entire life.